Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's conversation between Frank Ockenfels and Henry Rollins. I'm Josh Sanseri, chair of the Photography Department, Photography and Fashion Department, and a photography professor at Santa Monica College. In normal times, we would have a theater packed with enthusiastic fans of both Frank and Henry. But since COVID-19 is still among us, we're streaming this talk live to you, to your favorite streaming device, to view and participate in the safety of your own home. We're operating on a skeleton crew, everyone has been tested, and we're following all safety precautions required by Los Angeles County. Our program tonight brings together two inspiring, innovative artists who are known for pushing traditional boundaries in many different creative mediums, including music, writing, painting, and of course, photography. Frank is a fine art celebrity commercial photographer known for his use of mixed media, employing antique cameras that are often broken, and implementing non-photographic techniques into his pictures. He often uses collage while painting and drawing on his photographs. Frank is a highly sought-after entertainment photographer who has created some of the most iconic TV and movie advertisements commissioned in recent years, including The Walking Dead, Mad Men, Breaking Bad, American Horror Story, and many more. He's photographed countless movie and rock stars, including David Bowie, Lady Gaga, Bruce Springsteen, Jay-Z, Nirvana, Brad Pitt, and many, many more. His latest hardcover monograph, Frank Ockenfels Volume 3, accompanied his recent solo exhibition at Fahey Klein Gallery in Los Angeles. Henry Rollins is a punk rock icon who is well known for leading two influential bands, Black Flag and the Rollins Band. Henry is a risk-taking artist with a signature bluntness who sees traditional boundaries as opportunities. His astonishing career includes acting in film and television, writing and publishing several books. He's an activist, KCRW DJ, and a published photographer. His book of photographs, Occupants, was published in 2011 and serves as a wonderful document of the people he's met and places he's experienced throughout his voracious world travels. He's a solitary, curious traveler who seeks destinations less traveled, including several tours for the USO. Tonight's program is being streamed live with time for questions toward the end. To submit questions for Frank and Henry, please click the link that can be found on the same page you found this streaming link, smc.edu/photography. On that page, you'll also find a link for submitting cash donations to the photography department. Your donations will help us to continue offering special programs like tonight's, and every little bit helps. Without further delay, I'd like to introduce Frank Ockenfels and Henry Rollins.
Hello, Henry.
Hello from way over there.
Let me get my mask off my ears.
So I guess tonight's running order. I have a bunch of questions for you
About
a whole lot of stuff. But first, we're going to look at photos of mine, and I'll tell you about them. And if you have any questions for me, we can get right into it.
Okay.
And so this is Afghanistan on one of the aforementioned USO tours I did. In 2000 and something, I got an interesting email from the USO. Mm-hmm. Dear Henry, we don't know who you are. That's, really gets a guy going on a Tuesday. But we have sign-up sheets at every base where we have people deployed with this, who would you like to have appear magically tomorrow? Oh, your name keeps popping up. And so we don't know who you are, but the soldiers like you, so would you maybe be interested in appearing on behalf of the USO? I said, I'm interested, but maybe you want to go to the internets and check out my particular use of the First Amendment and how I feel about the invasion and occupation of Iraq before you bring me into Dick Cheney's corporate machine. And I thought I'd never hear back from them.
Yeah.
And they wrote back a few days later. They said, we've been watching your videos. Wow, what a mouth on you. And are you in or not?
Ah.
And within weeks, I'm in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And
no censorship. They didn't say you couldn't talk about anything.
No, the guiding principle that I learned almost immediately upon touching down was, doesn't matter who you vote for, what you think, you're here.
Right.
Like, I don't like the president, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Your job is to not get killed today.
Right.
The president doesn't matter. It matters that you don't get blown apart, because
Right.
that's very possible.
Yeah.
Get to the dining facility, the DFAC, that's the job.
Yeah.
And you become almost apolitical because it is only life and death.
Right.
And it's very liberating because you don't have to carry it all around. You're just hanging out in this unreal environment.
Right.
And Afghanistan captivated me immediately. I had been out way off in the distance at 2 forward operating bases, Coast and Gardez. And this is on the way back. And you waited at a base for the next chopper to take you back. And sometimes it's full and you have to wait. It's like a bus.
Yeah.
This is a Chinook where they can put, vehicles inside. It's the massive long one. And so I'm behind the guy who's basically, he's got a Mountain Dew bottle. He's spitting his chew juice. He's like basically unwinding.
Yeah.
His feet are dangling over the side. And these seats have no seat belts. Well, they have them, but you can just get up and walk around and fall to your death. So I said, can I walk over there? Like, sir, you can do anything you want. Like, okay. And so I just got behind him and tried to get his POV.
Yeah.
Because, I was, I guess, in my 40s when I was there. That's a guy, 19, 22. And you remember when you were young, you're imprinting images. That's going to be his.
Yeah.
Mine was like skateboarding and that's going to be his for the rest of his life.
Right.
And
And fearless. I mean, you sit in the back of that, not being afraid of death at all.
Right.
It's like,
and there's all kinds of death to be had. You can fall.
Yeah.
On this day, there's a Black Hawk helicopter guarding us. You can't see it because they're worried about gunfire from the mountains.
Right.
And as you know, Afghanistan is fantastically unconquerable. 330 BC, Alexander, he's in, he's out. 1219 to 1221, the Mongols go in, rejected. 1839, 1878, and 1919, the 3 Anglo-Afghan wars, the Brits got tired. The Soviets go in and are repelled by the Mujahideen fighters, which were repelled by the Stinger grenade, rocket-powered grenade given to the Mujahideen from America through Pakistan's ISI, Inter Services Intelligence, it's their CIA, to the Mujahideen. And the weapon it's incredible. You put it on your shoulder, you uncage the trigger, you look at the thing you want to blow up and you pull the trigger. The shoulder mount's disposable.
Yeah.
And on that day, like an hour before that was taken, I was wandering in and out of blown up Soviet crafts that were blown up with taxpayer money to push out the Soviets and use the Mujahideen to do it.
Right.
And that power vacuum that was established when we pulled out, the advisors and whoever else, established the new power to come in. And that's what America wrestles with now. When our current president says that we're going to be out of there on September 11th, the real question to ask is not, are all the soldiers gone? They will be, I guess. How many contractors are there?
No, that's the big question.
Because there's going to be hundreds of them. And I want to hear some transparency on that front.
Yeah.
But it's a fascinating country, and I've been there twice. And I read lots of books on this. I was so captivated by the Panjshir Valley and the Soviets getting their tails kicked by these tough guys who live this. And learning about Ahmed Shah Massoud, the Lion of the Panjshir Valley, fantastic fighter, freedom fighter there. So this...
But what's amazing about this image and what the writing in the book goes with it, I think, is wonderful because it talks about it's what you said at the beginning. There is no president. They're not a political party. Is that you discussed the conversation in the book, which was so well done. Is about the viewpoint of going I'm a soldier. This is who I am. This is what I'm doing. You don't understand because you haven't been here or you don't understand why I'm doing it. It's a fascinating how you've mixed your images within these observations or maybe even the conversations with the people that are sitting around with you. And that's
their
kind of makes it
religion
amazing.
is soldiering because it's the only thing that's going to get you through. Your buddies and technique and discipline.
Right.
And, seeing it before it sees you.
Right.
But these guys, they know me from a movie or something. They would get me to the side and just so what's going on in America? I go what do you mean? What did you do last week? I went to the grocery store. The grocery store? Whoa! And you see how homesick and how foreign this land is to them. Ohio, Michigan, and then this. Real fast, too. And I'm an amateur photographer. My locations are great, but I'm an amateur. But my through line is making Homo sapiens look good to redeem our dignity, because as awful as some examples of us can be, you see the good examples,
Right.
and you think, I want to be like that.
Right.
And I find it in these very distant points, and the lessons hit me like a cane.
Right.
And that's what I try and put through the lens. And thankfully with digital, you can take a lot of photos, get back to the hotel and go like, okay, never do that again. There's 8 hours that's never coming back.
Right.
Slide, please. So this is beautiful downtown Baghdad, and this is a Black Hawk helicopter. And I don't know how well you can see this soldier's face. He is dead set concentrated on the rooftops, because that's where munitions can come up and get you. And so that machine gun is active. There's a man on it. And this was our taxi service in the green zone. And when you'd be on with a big officer, they drive it like a limo. And it's like Star Wars. It's like a Lamborghini, but it's in the air. And these guys are the right stuff types. So when we had the big wig in there, when it's just me and the USO people, they wanted to see if they could make us like freak out and pass out. And so they would go way up in the air and then to go screaming down at a power line. And they keep looking like to see if there's a wet spot. And I know that these guys do this all the time, especially with an outsider. And it goes right at the power line, and right before it's the power line, and you go zero gravity. I'll never forget a layer of dirt from the floor in a pen. Like, wham! And they look back. I'm like, dry. You didn't get me. And so every base I was at. This is the one time I went to Iraq, 2006, I think. Almost every base I went to, Banzai, Anaconda, whatever, one, had an American casualty within 24 hours of us being there. So every base I was at, the mood was really intense. And even in the green zone, I was in Uday Hussein's bedroom. I slept in his bedroom one night. And I just opened up the doors of his beautiful balcony, and it's just intermittent gunfire all night long. And so that place was really, it was a heavy week. Like you feel 20 pounds lighter just flying out of the airport because every day is like breathing liquid.
Were you wearing a flak jacket?
Ceramic plated body armor, which is like, it's like wearing another you. By the end of the day, you're like, and you can feel like you can fly when you take it off because it's such a weight. But that stops an AK-47 bullet.
I mean, you have the heat and all that stuff, just everything mixing in. And
125 degrees.
As
soon as you finish a bottle of water, sir, and you drink water like you're like a screen door. And it doesn't go anywhere except out. And you're left with these amazing salt deposits on your clothes because you're continuously sweating out, and you drink all day. As soon as you finish one, because you're the talent, you can't be keeling over, Slide, please. This is Mali, central Mali. It's an amazing country in Western Africa. It is landlocked and surrounded by 7 countries. Senegal, Mauritania, Algeria, Niger, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, and Guinea. And it's like an hourglass pitched on its side. And the lower half has Bamako, the capital city. Then it gets narrow, and then it expands out the bigger of the 2 hourglass sides. And that's basically the Sahara Desert. And so lured by the music from this country that I love so much, like the Vieux Farka Touré, Ali Farka Touré, Tenari Wen, it's rich with music. I went for 2 years to the Desert Music Festival. And you start in Bamako, capital city, fly up to Mopti, which is where the hourglass gets narrow. It's on the Niger River. And then you wait a couple of days, and I went one time by the Niger River, one time over Dogon country in a 4x4. And then you grew for 5 days in this merciless desert with these bands playing with a power generator, playing from like 10 p.m. till 4 in the morning, and it's freezing cold at night and kill you by day. African sun is something else. So I was waiting for this guy Mahmoud, who I traveled with for 2 times, to come and pick me up to go over Dogon country the first time. And I'm walking around, and this is behind the hotel I was living in. And I encounter these amazing kids, and they see the camera, and immediately, they just start going off. And I'm running backwards, going, you'll be out of focus. And they don't care at all. And so I'm running backwards, like, trying to be Steadicam guy with not knowing what's behind me. And I eventually got one photo that wasn't a human blur of frenzied youth. But again, the idea of like sticking up for humans. The kids are fantastic, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
But for me, the star of the photo is this beautiful girl on the right.
Yeah.
If you notice, the kids are free with their hands, like their physicality. The kid wants to hit me, they're really in my face. Look at her, how she's holding her clothes, how she's physically back from the rest of the gang. She would kind of follow with them, and she was kind of like not as flamboyant as her friends. But for 1 minute, she smiled, and I happened to get that. She kind of let it down, and I got it, and then she put it back up again and kind of went, well, they're a little much. But she kind of let it loose for a minute there, and you see how unrestrained her joy is.
Yeah.
And this is that idea of, look at what they have to play with. I mean, the bucket, a used shoe, and pretty arid, tough, that's their neighborhood. And they find happiness. And so what's your problem?
Yeah.
That's the question I ask. I'm not asking you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
I know.
You know, we humans, especially in the West, you know, where we go to the gym because we have to watch our weight.
Yeah.
They live with food and water insecurity their entirety of their lives. And so...
well, every day is a survival.
That's
I mean,
it.
and I think that was like the conversation you were having about in the book was very much the thing, the parallel. Once again, I love how you've put these two conversations together, but looking at the joy in these people and just take it all out of question and then not go like, well, do they have a home? Are they eating today or whatever else? They're just happy. They're happy, beautiful human beings.
Are they on Instagram?
I mean, Instagram. Do they have enough followers?
There's so much you don't need in this life.
Right.
And you know, I when I get that proof, when I get it validated, it has made me a better person.
Yeah.
As Mark Twain said, travel is kind of, I'm misquoting him, but it's like kind of the death of bigotry. And that's certainly true. But I've become a slightly better person than my awful normal self from meeting people who are just better than I am. And
But I think it's also
I
the
got
way you're
nothing on
doing
these
it.
people.
You talk about in the book where you take yourself, a notebook and a camera, and you go out by yourself. And that in itself already, you're starting a conversation. And then you try to, and you don't plan something, you move into something. That's an amazing approach to something. You're allowing the world to come to you because there is no pretext and there is no, and you and yourself, you're walking around, you're just trying to find the conversation. And I think that's really amazing. And the photographs totally scream that. I mean, there's the question of saying, you know, photographs of whatever, a million words, whatever. I think that the conversation is these photographs are amazing themselves throughout the book. They really do capture these moments. But then the conversation next to it that you've captured or even come up with in seeing these things. You know, once again, this one has a great, you know, paragraph when you're reading it. But I think that's a big part of these photographs is you by yourself. Because if it was a group of people, the eyes are this, everything's this way. And it's just you. They're focused on you and you're open to the conversation, and they see you're open to the conversation. You see that in all the photographs.
Oh,
so,
thanks.
Yeah.
In a lot of countries I've been to, you know, someone will speak English, and they go, like, who are you here with? I'm like, I'm on my own.
Yeah.
Like in Iran, every man, like, who are you here with? I'm like, I'm here by myself. Yeah. Well, why are you here? And my icebreaker is, I'm here to meet you.
Yeah.
I'm Henry. It always gets a laugh.
Yeah.
And they go, so, on your own? I go, yeah, I'm curious, man. I just want to know. I don't want to be afraid of the world. And that, they go, oh, so you're not here to judge us. I'm here to learn.
Yeah.
So let's walk a block or two. And they're like, come over. And I've had tea, coffee, dinner, lunch. Like, because I met the taxi driver in Syria, and he took me everywhere.
Yeah.
Because I went there with no preconceived anything.
Right.
It's also a way you can get cut up, but that's also any city in America.
Yeah.
Slide, please. This is Bangladesh. And behind the hotel, I was eating dinner at this hotel I was in, and there's a human rights group there, and they recognized me, and I went over to talk to them, and they go, what are you doing? I said, I'm just going to hit the streets and see what I can see. They said, don't not go to the Corral slum. It's behind the hotel. You can't miss it. It's too big to miss. Even you'll find it. No sense of direction. And so for the next 3 days, I'd leave the back of the hotel and walk until you see the gate. And you walk in to this massive bit of property, and you see this alternate economy. Things are being repurposed, like syringes, the plastic's going to get sold, and they're taking it from the dumpsters from the hospital. Food from the breakfast room of the hotel I was staying in is probably getting repurposed there.
Right.
So I'm walking down this road, and I see this smoldering pile of garbage. It steams when it decomposes. And I see this family, and they're going through the garbage. And there's this radiant girl.
Yeah.
And her parents are hardworking, looking for the food. And I have this silent, I'm like,
Yeah.
and she waves back. I pointed at the camera. I go, oh, it's cool for her. Yeah. And she's like, click, 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 and the smile.
Yeah.
But there's some subtext I'd like to point out. She's amazing. She's amazing. Yeah. Look at the mom. Look at the strength and beauty in her arms and hands. Mm-hmm. Look how articulately she holds in her right hand this stick to go through it. Mm-hmm. And I'm just, speculating. But with her left hand, I think she's showing, garbage. Like, not, boy, am I happy. Yeah. The left hand is saying, like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
If you can smell it, I can smell it.
Right.
This is dinner. Yeah. Your dinner is at that hotel, which I could see from any point.
Right.
In the slum. And at night, I could look down into the slum, which is the pool of blackness, because there's not much electricity.
Right.
And so I had this silent exchange with her. The parents were oblivious. They have their eyes on their work, and I just kind of waved and kept walking. Mm-hmm. And I think about her. I hope she's okay. I mean, she'd be a teenager now.
The hands are. I mean, even the young girl's hands holding the.
Mm-hmm. And look how beautifully they're dressed. The clothes are clean.
Yeah.
There is dignity. Yeah. They're like, oh, they're slobs, but they're not.
Yeah.
This isn't Cleveland. It's a different way humans get by. Yeah. The clothes are. She's scrubbed. I mean, that's a loved child.
Yeah.
And that's the message for me, is like, that's a family, and they are doing what you would do for your family, getting them through as best they can.
Right.
Yeah. Slide, please. I use Kathmandu, Nepal, as a rest stop on my way to other places. Like, I do that in Beijing. Well, when I used to travel, but I kind of bounce through Beijing and Kathmandu, and I always stay at this hotel called the Yak and Yeti, because it's called the Yak and Yeti. Yeah. Whenever I leave the hotel, I go down into where all the backpacker kids are, and the same guy always tries to sell me hash. And I try to explain to him, like, you remember last time, like 2 years ago, and like yesterday? He goes, hashish? I'm like, I'm that guy. I don't care about the hashish, but thank you. He never remembers. Yeah. So on my second trip there, I was on my way to Bhutan. I see billets on the ground, and I hear noise. Got my camera, go to the noise. It's always a good tip. And it's election day. And so people start grabbing me by my arm. Journalist, which can get you killed. I'm like, no, tourist, lightweight. And because I have a full frame, full body camera. And so they're going, journalist, and they're dragging me, like, here, take a photo of that. Now come over here.
Oh my gosh.
And I realize there's no photographers. And so this guy's dancing in a circle. I grabbed him when he came through. She's about to start dancing. There's the band on the right. And there's some people, their cell phones. So I took a bunch of photos until I lost light and hiked back to the hotel. Went online and found out the government kicked the press out of the elections at around 0900 that day. So I basically wandered into an exclusive.
Right.
And I was the only one there apparently with a camera. So my manager sent the photos to Reuters and other places. Who knows if they used them. Yeah. So I got this inadvertent scoop because I just right place, right time. Yeah. And everyone was so happy about the camera. Like, this is going down. Yeah. Document us.
Right.
And why the government didn't want to see such jubilation, I figure it's good promo for, like, hey, they're happy.
Yeah, they're happy.
Hey. Slide, please. This is Hanoi, Vietnam. This is a school that deals with children and adults who suffer from multi-generational toxicity from Agent Orange.
Oh my God.
Agent Orange, the active ingredient, from what I've read, I'm not a scientist or a chemist, is a tetrachlorobenzodioxin. And the United States dropped about 20 million gallons of Agent Orange on Vietnam. Yeah. When they couldn't get Agent Orange, they used another compound called Agent White. It's a different compound, but it kind of does the same thing. So they got 5 million gallons of that. So 25 million gallons of hyper-concentrated defoliant, which you use parts per million for farming, but they were getting like right out of the bleach bottle, right on their heads. Yeah. And the planes that would deploy the spray, it was called, the code word was Hades, and the motto was, only you can prevent a forest. So they were there basically to starve people out and defoliate mountains so you couldn't hide. The United States copped that from the Brits, who did it in the late 40s, 50s in Malaysia.
Oh, really?
And they used a version of Agent Orange. And we basically, the United States took the playbook and deployed it. And so generations later, you see the girl on the right.
Yeah.
So I've been to Vietnam a few times. I'm there to learn, and it's an amazing place. I found an old war historian who took me to this school. I made friends with the principal. I gave a large cash donation. And he said, well, you've made merit. Have the run of the place. They grabbed a teacher to take me to the classrooms, and I asked to take their photos. And that's what Agent Orange looks like decades later. It's still punishing these really beautiful people. It's a nation of farmers.
Yeah.
And it's a fascinating thing to get the history of the Vietnam War, which they call the American War, from someone in Vietnam.
Sure.
Because their position is, well, you lost. I'm like, I'm not here to argue. Okay, tell me why. Because we're still here.
Yeah.
To win, you got to kill us all.
Yeah.
And look, Ho Chi Minh, he's everywhere. Hey.
Yeah.
And I go there to learn, and great food and really cool record stores and these amazingly resilient, gentle, beautiful people who teach and teach and teach by just being with them.
Right.
And I learned quite a lesson about resiliency on this day.
Well, yeah, seeing her, I mean, she's moving forward. You know,
Yeah,
and
that's paper they're cutting into shapes, which they're going to color and make paper flowers, which you see behind them.
Oh, wow.
And it was a very interesting day. Slide, please. Masaka, Uganda. It's
This picture's crazy. I love this.
Northeast sort of Kampala, of the capital city. I was on my way to what is now South Sudan. It was just Sudan when I was going there. And this is a school where the great organization Drop in the Bucket, of which I'm on the board of, drilled a water well for the kids to be hydrated. Because hydrated kids sit in school and learn better because they're not thirsty.
Yeah.
And instead of bringing mosquito larva buckets of water to school, clean water, bathrooms, and places to clean up. And when girls go through physiological change in their life, they really need access to cleaning themselves up.
Right.
And without that, a lot of girls, being self-conscious, dropped out of school. Their literacy stops.
Yeah.
With water, the girls stay in school,
Yeah.
and now they're running things. So water's more than just your thirst. It's education, it's life, it's literacy. Yeah. And so I was there with Drop in the Bucket. We were there to inspect the well. And these kids saw my camera, and I had this, I was in the middle. I was like the bullseye in this, massive circle of these gorgeous kids. And me and this kid just found each other.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's happened with you. Like, oh, you're my guy.
Yeah.
And it just happens. Yeah. And I took that photo, and you just see all the energy, and they just want to look.
Yeah.
And I showed everyone this
around
photo.
His curiosity.
Yeah.
And he's looking at you.
Yeah,
the rest of them are looking at what's going on and kind of feeling the energy of all them pushing forward to see the camera. He's right in there.
Yeah.
I mean,
And everyone wanted to look, so I finally went, and I put the lens cap on. I just gave them the camera, and they passed it around, and like a boomerang, it came back.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So a lot of trust, but I trusted them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I started going to Africa in the 1990s. I was doing an interview with someone somewhere. So you're well-traveled. I'm like, well, I'm well-traveled for rock and roll. Europe, I got it sewn up. Japan, Brazil, wherever I can get, Russia. But I've never been to Africa. And I thought to myself, well, why not? It's not like you're not curious. Yeah. So in the late 90s, I just assigned myself, pick a chunk of the continent and go every year. And I don't know how many times I've gone now. With COVID, things have slowed down. But I usually try and go every year, every other year, depending on how busy I am. And I just pick a geographic chunk, hit a few countries, and see what's there.
Right.
This time I was in a 4x4, and I went north into what is now South Sudan, which was pretty intense. It's even more intense now. Slide, please. This is what is now South Sudan. And there's a lot of different tribes in this part of Africa. And this is often the case. There's a lot of tribes and peoples. Let's see, Mundari, Dinka, Kuku. There's more. Those are a few. The rest will come an hour from now when I'm gone. Those are Mundari. and you see the cattle behind them.
Yeah.
And this is a cattle camp that Drop in the Bucket are friends with. So on this day, we went to some village. We bought this big generic block of bright blue soap, which they're going to saw into pieces. And I said, what's this for? And John from Drop in the Bucket said, just wait. So we beep the horn outside the cattle camp, and we come hustling up with this massive chunk of soap. And the chief of the cattle camp comes out, and they know each other, and he takes the soap as a gift and basically waves us in, like, you've given us a gift, come take photos. Yeah. These guys are like 6'3" plus, so you ask politely, photo? Because they can throw you back to your house.
Yeah.
And they live on a diet of milk, millet. They trade the milk and dairy stuff for other things, meat, grain, whatever. And you'll see the scarification in the foreheads. The reason they're covered in ash is in the evening, the flies come. Where there's cattle, there's flies. And these will bite through your jacket. They're really intense. And so they cover themselves with ash. It keeps the flies at bay. And they build fires because the smoke keeps the flies. It's all about not getting bitten by the flies. Because they have to look out for the cattle too. Because that's their survival is the health of the cattle. So they're semi-nomadic. They have to follow the water. And so we were there with them until sundown, and I showed them the photos, and they seemed to like them. But just the sheer beauty of these two men, the human form in different parts of the world is different. Different jawlines, different skin textures, just heights and.
Well, nutrition also basically changed things around too.
Yes.
Whatever you're eating in your diet and things.
And just rivers and mountains, people being locked off from meeting, that person over there. And in Central Asia, Stalin brought a bunch of people in. So there's all these interesting, like, Asiatic faces, blonde hair, blue eyes, because Stalin said, come on in, we're going to take over.
Right.
And then, like, if you're in, like, Kyrgyzstan, you're like, excuse me, may I stare at you? Because like an Asian skull shape, but like pale eyes and hair.
Wow.
And that's history talking to you.
Yeah,
That's the history of moving the chess pieces around. But I've been to 2 Mundari cattle camps. Sadly, now that South Sudan, the newest country in the world, got democracy like a shot glass with no half stepping in, South Sudan is in a very bad state. The Mundari now have to have rifles to protect their cattle from other tribes, which is sad because everyone used to get along. But when you bring in a Western idea into a non-Western environment, you got to be really, really careful.
Is it also because of climate change, maybe, where there's less and less, so people are now basically going
That's another demon.
It's another part of it,
Yeah,
right?
because I was asking people there. I was there with a film crew. And I said, do you think the North is going to let you go when you have all the agriculture and oil? You think they're going to let you go? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Good luck. Yeah. I go, and I told them, I was with a school bus full of kids who came up from their school to vote. I said, democracy's tricky. Constant maintenance.
Yeah.
Like, you can't take your eyes off it. And they had some rose-colored glasses. They're like, no, it's going to be great. I'm like, it's going to be the biggest trial of your life.
Right.
Because everyone gets to say, it's tough. Like, I come from a country that brags about it, and we argue incessantly. Good luck. Be patient.
Be patient,
And, it's pretty tough there now. Slide, please. That's in the mountains near Port-au-Prince, Haiti. And after the earthquake, I went on a Joe Strummer good guy on the planet mission, where I went with a bunch of U.S. cash, big wad of money. So I don't know if credit card, what's going to work. So I brought money, and I went there on my own, found a guy named Jimmy who works for a car company, and he speaks some English. And he said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go to churches, camps, orphanages, cash donations, meet people, take photos, and learn. He went, we can do that. Yeah. So I'd buy soccer balls for kids and soap for the grown-ups. They want to do the washing. And at one point, I met an NGO group at the hotel I was at. And the president was there every night hanging out with Sean Penn. You'd walk by them and their bodyguards, like, hey. Anyway, the NGO, I met them at breakfast. They said, hey, you want to come on a day trip with us? I went, where are we going? Up into the mountains to an orphanage. I'm like, oh, I'm in.
Yeah.
And so there's an amazing Haitian-American woman. She's a nurse in Miami. Her and her father run this orphanage. Oh. She divides her time between Florida and Haiti. He's there full time. She makes some money, flies to Haiti, all these kids suffer from malnutrition. They're orphaned by the earthquake. And some of the stomachs, I talked to her for quite a while. I said, how do you get the stomach to go down? She goes, it takes months, but it's what I can do. And they listened to me, and me and my dad were getting those stomachs down. Wow. And this is a look I've seen on so many children. I saw it in Madagascar, Mali. I've seen too much, and I'm gone. I met kids who were abducted by the Lord's Resistance Army and made to cut people up. And all those kids, there's no one home. I met a whole group of them. They're heartbreaking because they're gone. Yeah. And this child is traumatized for whatever reason or reasons. But and so he's beautiful and vacant. And he went right through my lens. I was like, hi, I'm Henry. Yeah. Nothing. Yeah. But to me, the poetry of this shot is the boy's beautiful. All these kids are amazing. But look at his friend with his hands on his shoulders. He's looking that way. I'm thinking he wants to protect his friend from the crazy sweating guy with all the bad Reagan-era tattoos. And so he's like, I got you, man. We'll get through this. This idiot's going to be in your face for a second, but I've got you. And that's a big gesture. That's a young person thinking like an adult. Right. And you've been to some places where young people are thrust into adult occupations like, hey, run the store, we're going to go get lunch, and the kids slinging sunflower seeds and whatever else. And you see kids in villages walking, they're like out of Dickens. They're just like, got the streets wired, and they're like 7, but they're already doing 30-year-old adult person stuff. Right. That is a very heroic and compassionate move. Just that physicality. And it's got to be a reaction to me. I have no proof, but I'm guessing. Yeah, it's totally, it's protection. You're basically, and telling the person they're there even though they're not right in front of you. So. And you can do that for someone else. That to me is the transferable lesson. Like you can do that for a stranger. You can do that for a friend. Instead of insulting them, you can back them up. And you never know. You might need it from someone else. So slide, please. Downtown Port-au-Prince. I was with Jimmy. We're walking that way through this church across from their White House, which looks like Godzilla stomped on it. The entire front is on the lawn. The whole thing came down. And I love that Canon, that wide lens, because it just bends things and makes clouds look really trippy. We got a distance in there and went to the right, and he pointed at the ground. He goes, this is where the pew was, where my wife and I, this was our church. Oh, wow. And the people here have lost so much. I mean, generationally, historically. And this earthquake was nobody's friend. And there's a lot of NGOs there. But, the person who I think is just amazing, is Sean Penn. He does not let up. He keeps going back. He raises money. It's not a thing he did for a photo op. I mean, I was sitting in front of the hotel waiting for Jimmy. He walked by me. I'm like, okay, I don't know the guy. But I'm like, this is real for you. I've only been once. He's probably been once this week. But I saw him when I was there too. Okay, I admire it. It's real. And all I could do was leave money. I left a bunch of money there, which wasn't the worst thing. But you've done it. 90 minutes later, you're in Miami. We share a planet. But even that, how about just crossing over to Dominica? I mean, you fly over there, and it's literally you see the line that defines one part of the island from the other part of the island. And quite often the idea is, well, what's up? What's their problem? What's your problem? Your problem is you can't see the problem. It's not them. It's a ton of stuff. Everything from climate change to capitalism to history. To who's president or whatever. And that is such a trippy place to be because you've got MTV Beach Break on one side, fun times, and then it is across a DMZ, right? Like a little, just like a fence and a stick. I was there with Olivia Wilde, and we were there for doing, was it Artists for Peace and Justice? And they found out that basically that the thing that's not taken care of in most NGOs and that kind of stuff, little kids are easy to get money for.
kids who are teenagers in high school, which is when you really need to educate them, aren't being taken care of.
Right.
And it's amazing because I think Sean's part of this also, but a lot of actors are given to the school, and it's all Haitian teachers and run by Haitians. There's no Americans. It's all Haitians, which is amazing. So that to me was like a really...
Yeah, and how does the place get better? You educate everyone.
Yeah, you educate
You don't
everybody.
let up on the young adults
Even in
because they're going to be
America.
running it.
Yeah.
And they've got to be literate, smart, and world smart.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the good investment. Of course, kids matter too, but when they're 18, that might be the next president you're talking to.
That's the group of people you need to be educating and helping them out and getting them out there and understand why they need to stay in Haiti and make it a better place.
Right. And then they can give it back to the youngins coming up.
Right, exactly.
And that's how you break the cycle of abuse. Slide, please. Myanmar, Burma, if you will, largest country in Southeast Asia. I drove out of what's called Yangon now. I drove out of Rangoon. I was with a very interesting traveling party. I was with a guy who was ex-CIA who'd done operations in there. And as close as we could get to Aung San Suu Kyi's house, Tan Shui was the last of the junta guys. He was still holding sway. We got as close to across the lake from her house and took photos. He actually interviewed her for AP, like from her gate years before. There's some monks, this massive bowl of rice, and I just thought how fun it would be. The white, the red, and just the size of the bowl.
Yeah.
And I've spent a lot of time in a lot of Buddhist countries, and I've had some hilarious conversations with monks. I forget where I was Thailand somewhere. And I was standing next to two monks, and they got like cell phones and really cool motorbikes. I said, English? They're like, yeah. I go like, so what's up with the motor scooters and the cell phones? Like, and that's such a uncool question, but we're just kind of joshing with each other. They said, well, it's Henry, right? We use the cell phones to talk to our friends, and we use the motor scooters to get around town. I was like, oh, such an idiot. I'm so not from here. I was somewhere, and I was standing with a monk. We're looking at a statue of Buddha covered in bird droppings and pigeons or some kind of birds all over the statue. He said, you see the lesson? I'm like, no. He goes, if you sit still too long, the birds crap on you. Gotta go. And like we left laughing. And I've had just amazing times with these amazingly strong, yet incredibly peaceful people. And you see their strength is their peace. And you mess with them, they'll right now.
Yeah.
But the message is peace. And their meal, one meal a day, that's why I use a big bowl, I asked. And they must beg for their meal. So they're depending on you, your mercy, and your goodwill.
I think it's interesting, I'm sorry, but this is interesting because the paragraph with this was talking about sharing an open latrine, like all that kind of stuff where, you see this kind of thing and we are fascinated by it, but this is the meal. Would you, as a person, all of a sudden show up and eat out of the same bowl as somebody else, or someone saying that's the only place you can go to the bathroom and we're all using the same hole in the ground, or there's one shower and everyone's going to use this, or there's one this or one that, and you have to basically change your whole mindset of how we live our lives.
Yeah.
And how are you with that? I mean, when you're in the middle of all that, do you completely try to immerse yourself as much as you can?
I've done
I'm just curious.
We are all going to use that hole, so like knock on the grass mat before you come in.
Right.
Or don't, and we'll laugh about it.
Yeah.
And all of that's happened. I'm like, hey, man.
Yeah. It feels like that with the pictures. That's what I was curious. Because, I mean, you couldn't write a lot of the things you talked about in the book unless you actually had to have that moment. You know what I mean?
Oh, you have quite a few.
Yeah.
And, in parts of India, everything is done in the street.
Right.
Including death. Like, there's a dead body walking by. It's going to go to the funeral home. You're like, 3, 4. Like my first day there in Kolkata, I saw 9 dead people. Which was a bit much for a Western city dweller, but it's just a different way of rendering death.
Right.
Slide, please. I'm high on images, low on time. Back to Mali, about a 90-minute dune buggy ride out of Timbuktu, you get to Essakane. And I'm a kid raised on Lawrence of Arabia and National Geographic. I always wanted to go where the camels are,
right.
Where Lawrence did his thing with Omar Sharif. And look at, it's the silhouettes and the Tuareg men on their Harleys. Like, if you got, a camel in the desert, you got mobility, you rule. And you're not home. I live in LA, that's not LA. And that's why I like that picture, because it's so foreign to me, the environment.
Yeah.
And I was like so happy.
Well, the shapes and the color and
Yeah.
the black of the black with the orange of the sky, and then it's a really beautiful picture, Henry.
Yeah. And it's that moment where the desert is releasing you from its grip,
Yeah.
because 3 hours before, it's like projectile vomit hot. I mean,
Yeah.
you keep putting on the sunscreen.
And the cool of the evening is coming in. Is that what it feels like?
Yes,
I've not been to a
and then
desert
it's like a
that.
held breath, and then the night comes, the temperature drops,
Yeah.
and you're putting on everything you brought with you.
Wow.
It's hot, cold, and their lives are in this. Slide, please. Bhopal, India. I went for the 25th anniversary of the Bhopal disaster. Union Carbide India Limited, they're making insecticide, methyl isocyanate, metric tons of it blew up. Cloud in the sky, it's heavier than air. It basically bug spray dropped on all these people, killed a bunch of people, and to this day, people still have spinal deformation,
Yeah, sure.
itchy skin, bad scalp problems. Union Carbide didn't do much,
Yeah.
sold the property to Dow, and the people of Bhopal said, "Can you help us?" And Dow said, "It's not on our watch." And so every year, that's all the different CEOs. I think the big one was Warren Anderson. He was the guy at the time,
Yeah.
lived to be in his 90s, never got a scratch. They're going to take that down to the old Union Carbide India Limited plant and light it on fire. And so I was there for the march, and I just photographed and interviewed people and
Wow.
asked a lot of questions. And I researched that for a year before I went.
Right.
And I just, I get into a thing and I just bottle up and go, as John Lee Hooker says. Slide. The Niger River, on our way to Timbuktu, that's our boatman. And on that day, he advised us, he looked at me and my trembling boatmates. He looks at us like, stop talking, stop breathing, because there's hippos next to us.
Yeah.
And they'll beat your boat
Yeah.
up. And so we just held breath. And I was thinking how bitchin' it would be to die in the jaws of a hippo. I'd like to be old, because I'll just get better looking and funnier as I go. But if you have to go, where your last nanosecond is like, hippo!
Hippo.
Yeah, crunch! And so my boatmates were terrified. I'm like, well,
Yeah, it could be. It
could be kind of cool if you could get a photo on the way out. Slide. I went to North Korea. It took me 3 years to get the visa. Very tough visa to get. This is the JSA, the Joint Security Area. You've seen this in every documentary.
Right.
You can enter on a day trip from Seoul, South Korea. I recommend it. Through that door. That's the south. Behind me is the door to the north, because I was in Pyongyang. And so I'm in there with some Norwegians, and they're very wonderful. They're in my shot. And so they're all looking at the tables. That's where the north and south meet and mediate. That's where the military comes in and they hash things out, because you go home and they go home. And it's guarded on both sides. There's people,
Yeah.
it's really intense. It's crazy. And so I waited for my fellow day tourists to leave. And the guy is so mad at me because I dared to stay.
Yeah.
And I had no time to compose the shot. I just went click and he went out. And he's pissed.
Yeah, yeah.
And I looked at the photo and went, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
If he doesn't rat me out, because my tour guy, he would have taken the photo. But he didn't rat me out. And so I got the photo out and got it back to Beijing. And it's just one of my favorite photos I've ever
Yeah.
taken. Just being alone with this guy in the JSA was quite a feat. Not
yeah.
easy. And
But the look on his face is completely. It's almost like everything they probably think about us. They don't know much about us, but we are the devil.
Dude, photo. That's
Yeah.
what they think.
Yeah, yeah.
That we just,
Yeah.
And I kind of did that to him, but I just wanted that moment. And
So good. Yeah.
he might have thought he was going to get in trouble. There's a lot
Sure.
of everyone's watching the other guy there. Slide, please. Oh, goody.
Okay.
Damn, I only ran a little over. I'm so sorry. Your turn.
I just want to ask a quick question
Yeah.
about us. About
I'm so sorry for going.
Because no, it's fine. Because there's so many questions I have about your book, because I love as I said before, the two. But there's one that was basically about Northern Ireland, and you talked about having someone break down your door, walking in the house, a father knocking to the ground, embarrassing him in front of his children.
Yeah.
So right now, this is what we're in the middle of, anyways, in America, even the sense of people being being abused like that. and thinking that how long ago was this written? Like how long ago?
That was 2008.
Yeah.
And I spent most of the time in Armagh. And by the time we got to downtown, well, the city center, the talking drum goes. Our van was spotted, and everyone makes a phone call. We were interviewing a pretty controversial guy there, and his brother was blown up by the IRA, and so brother or cousin, and so we're interviewing this guy Willie, forgetting his last name. The IRA, well, they're not in the IRA anymore, but they pull up. These are like men in their 60s and 70s with the angriest people I have ever seen in my life.
Wow.
And they get out, Willie, you're talking to these people.
Yeah.
And the producer goes, we have to stop the interview. I'm like, this is getting good.
Yeah.
There's people. I'm like, either we die or we don't. Come on, man, you got to go all in.
Yeah.
So we got the interview finished. But we interviewed ex-IRA guys, people who had killed, people who'd blown things up.
Yeah.
And the basic consensus was, I'd do it all again. I interviewed one guy, did like 19 years in prison for blowing up a building with people in it. I said, so what was that like? He went, I got a lot of reading done. I'm like, okay. It was so intense.
Crazy.
And, why are they shooting back at us? Because you humiliated the dad.
Yeah.
And that's like a lot of times in Iraq. You break the door down, you humiliate the dad in front of his wife and his kids.
Yeah.
He's got to come for you now. You don't know the way of the walk here. You knock.
But what you said is so amazing, is that this kid went from basically going, I'm going to have a normal life. I'm going to grow up and basically be a teacher or a doctor or an astronaut. And now, as you said, it was like, now I know what I'd be. You've totally changed my perception of who I want to be as a human being anymore. Now you've given me a reason to basically change my life and start looking at things in completely a different way.
Yeah, and you'll never get that person
And you never
back,
get that back.
to where
Oh,
they
no,
were,
no.
because the truth they understand is truer than the previous one of
You can
college
talk about
and-
it, but when you see it, physically see it, and you have that experience, it's how could it not change your life?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah. I just wanted to. I mean, that was one of those. I read that one, and I was like, man.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you and your
Let's
work.
talk about me. Talk about my little work. Yeah. So
what is this?
So my book basically was it's a 30-year kind of observation of all the stuff I've done in my life, and I mean, I shoot mostly celebrity music. I've photographed you and a lot of people in my life. And over the time, I just started saying there had to be something else. Like I'd take the picture, and then I'd want to do something else, and I started keeping these journals, and I started writing things down, and I started collecting pieces of paper and scrap, and I started putting them together, and then I would basically make my own narrative, because you'd shoot for magazines, and then they'd publish the picture, and I had these pictures afterward, and I'm like, well, there's more to be said. Something else is going on here. What else that might be? So you can go to the next slide.
And the answer was mixed media.
Well, it was, yeah, and I was trying to tell another story, and at first, I used to keep, this is a good example. Like I'd photograph, Mila, and then afterward, I'd start taking all these pieces and putting them together and writing little something about it, or just finding pieces that I liked, or how I might thought it'd be more interesting to see her, represented. So if you go to the next one. So I used to keep I kept the journal for myself. I didn't care. It was if you wanted to look at it, that was fine, but I really didn't want your opinion, because to me, journals were something you basically wrote that you just wanted to get out of your head. You know what I mean? They were a personal thing, and I said things, and I put things in there that I really didn't care if anyone ever saw. And David Bowie was the first person who, when I used to carry up my knapsack, he'd walk over to my knapsack and he'd go, "What's going on with the book?" And he'd pull it out and he'd look at it, and he loved, because I write backwards, because I'm dyslexic, so I write backwards easier.
I think that would fascinate him.
He loved that. He loved everything about that. So I would write these narratives over there, and I'd put things in there, and we did about 15 shoots together, and every single shoot he'd kind of see what was going on with me, and what's going on, and he would be very supportive in you can go to the next slide if you want.
It's
he
like
would
90s Bowie.
Huh?
That looked like 90s Bowie.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I met him like Tin Machine to I did Earthling with him, so it's like that kind of.
I saw that tour.
Yeah,
that was good.
Good tour. Yeah.
Was it Miriam on bass?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. What was her name?
They covered "Oh Superman." I asked her before the show, "Are you guys going to cover "Oh Superman"? I heard you all are doing it. She goes, "I'll put a word in."
I'll put a word in.
Big guy. Yeah, It probably wasn't about me, but they played it. It blew my mind.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So around the same time of doing all this stuff, I was shooting with this handheld 4x5, which I photographed you with. You might be in there in this one, maybe. And I just would basically at the end of every shoot, I'd pick it up and I'd say, let me shoot 3 sheets of film of you. So this I'm having an exhibition that starts in a month in Sweden at Photographic, and there's a one wall of this, and it's 448 of these on the wall, and it's just all these faces that I've captured with the same camera over over a period of time, and it's everything from my kids to like writers to directors to actors to musicians.
All in the Family guy.
Yeah, he's in there. Yep,
right there,
right in the center. Yeah,
yeah,
right next to Shakira. And then there's I shot. This is your. This was shot on the set of Robert's movie.
Oh, Johnny Mnemonic.
Yeah, that's Gibson.
Oh yeah, he hung out for a few days on that.
That was when I was there, and I did his portrait. Yeah, on that time.
Yeah, he's a blast. What a brain on that guy.
What a great face. I mean, that's how I always look at stuff.
And dear Lemmy.
Yeah,
one of my
Lemmy's
favorite
there,
people.
next to Bill Murray, to so it's great because it's kind of like this kind of history of my life and all these faces that have come in front of me.
And these are all your photos. You've had amazing intersections. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You'll do the most straight up commercial shoot.
Yes.
And then you'll do other stuff.
Right.
And I'm going to assume, which is dangerous, that you don't cookie cutter anything. That every photo session is like a thumbprint. It's for that person to get what you want out of that session.
Right.
Between the commercial shoots were very mainstream, perfect lighting and perfect people, whatever, and the more artistically inclined, where it's going to be a underlit setup to get more emotion, perhaps. I'm not trying to tell you what you do. But is there a through line through the more artistic pursuits? And I'm not saying the commercial pursuits aren't artistic, but the more mainstream stuff, like for a magazine, or for the more shadowy, evocative stuff.
Right.
Is there an ethos, a discipline, a result that goes through both ideas?
When I started out, there was the time frame of Annie Leibovitz. Everybody wanted to be Annie. You know what I mean? It was that open, big octobank light, and it was making I'd say, I'm going to shoot Henry, so I'm going to make a little set for Henry to sit in.
Yeah.
And then it got that way. I wasn't that guy. I was always trying to figure out what's next. I was changing cameras out. I was changing lighting. I would constantly. So my career took a while to get to the point where other friends of mine, because they would pick a style and then they'd be easy to sell. Yeah. I had multiple styles. I dove into the music industry, and then the music industry, I could say, I'm going to shoot you with this camera, with this light, and I'm just going to mix it up. And at the end of the day, you had 12 pictures, and 12 pictures would be all different. And I liked that attitude of constantly, and then working with somebody, meeting somebody. When I photographed you, I did this portrait of you, and there's like all these shards of light on your face. And then I said, I'll put you in front of a piece of glass, and I said, write something on the glass. I'm curious what you're going to write. And then you wrote, I'm not totally forgot what you wrote, but you wrote something, and then the look on your face was very different than the person than when I was photographing you. Because there was I brought you into it somehow, that you basically said, okay, I'm part of this, and I can put something in here, and I can be part of this conversation.
Is that an idea? Is that perhaps the through line? Finding that person's id, or
finding something,
their thing, and photographing that, where it's not just the pretty face, it's the humanity comes out, and you got to unlock it with the camera and the way you present yourself to this person.
It's looking for the moment of the child in the middle of the group of the other kids, where they look back at you.
Right.
And if you can get someone to, even if it's for a frame, like you could shoot a whole advertising shoot for a movie poster, and if you can get one moment where they look back at you and you really, there's that connection, that's the conversation. I love the conversation of taking a picture, because it should be the purest. It's the moment you and I have chosen to be together.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I try to basically, even in doing the stuff that's commercial, I still try to bring in the moment.
So that's the through line.
Yeah.
That human moment, no matter if it's huge.
They'll never use it, but I got the moment. You know what I mean? It's like, you know what I mean?
It's for you.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that some of these people, they see it and they'd like a print of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because these are all Polaroids. You pull the Polaroid, you'd see it. So, I was shooting David Lynch, and I basically was, and he's amazing to shoot, because his reaction the first time was, I have a cup of coffee, you can come meet me, and then come to my office, take a picture. When the coffee's done, you're done. I said, okay, I'll take the challenge, sure. Went there, stood outside. I said, sit here, there's a sliding door, did a whole series of portraits of him, finished his coffee, I walked away. The second time he says, you come to my house, you can't bring any lights, anything, you can bring a camera. So I showed up with 3 assistants, and you meet me at my front door. So front door opens up, there's an entryway, it's a room, and then I had 4 assistants with me, and I put an assistant outside, and I said, take the sunlight, bang into this assistant, bang it. So I used that, and he thought it was very funny. He goes, okay, so you're playing by the rules. And so I'm shooting this 4x5 portrait of him, and I'm pulling it, and every time I put one down, I could see his eyes go like this, and all of a sudden he goes, that's the one. And he goes, that's me. And then I turned and I go, yeah, and then he, right out the door, that was it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that was fine. Because to me, I didn't need to have 100 pictures of him. I just needed the one.
The one, the
right one. You know what I mean? And that's an argument to have in this world of being a professional photographer, is that you can't walk into a magazine and go, here's the picture. And they go, well, where's the rest? We'd like to have a choice.
Well, they're doing CYA because they got to answer to someone upstairs, probably, right?
You know, yeah. So you can
Beautiful.
go to the next one. So over the years, I started to look at portraiture and saying there's more just looking at a single image kind of thing. And I started making these collages with this old passport camera and started using distortion and kind of like finding different ways of trying to find a moment within that can't be replicated. I like when things can't be done again, especially in a portrait. Like this one with Moby was a complete, everything went wrong, but everything went right kind of thing. Or the one with Robert Altman, he said, no, no, no. And then I said, if you just sit here for 3 sheets of film, I'll do it. And then I sat him down, and I just, he looked at me, and I shot 3 frames, and he walked away. And his assistant turned and looked, and she goes, Robert, you should look at this picture. It's the best ever taken. And he looks at me, and he goes, you think you're good, aren't you? And he goes, I got you. He goes, okay, you happy? And he goes, you got your picture? And I go, yeah. He goes, it's very nice. And then he walked out, and I was like, okay. It's like, but it didn't matter because everyone has to have their moment. And I liked, because everything about that conversation is in that picture. He looked at me, but he looked at me with what he felt about being photographed.
Well,
and that's okay. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
At least it's honest. You know what I mean? It could be more like it just, that grin on your face. It's like that's not a real picture of anybody. Yeah, they'll love it, but that's not real. So, you can go to the next one. I started mixing the journals and creating portraiture, taking the portrait, putting it into the journals, and then recreating it into a portrait.
I have a feeling she'd love that.
She did at the time, and now it's kind of like a thing, because she's gotten older, and maybe it was. When I shot this picture of her, it was a whole time frame when she was very sexy in all the pictures. Everyone shot her with basically barely having clothes on, kind of thing. And everyone was obsessed with her lips. So I was shooting her for Premiere Magazine when it existed, and she showed up and she said, "I'm wearing a turtleneck. I'm not being sexy." And I was like, "Okay." And then we started having this conversation about her lips and her makeup artist. And I said, "Maybe we should just take like a piece of red and just smear it across your lips, and you can just stare at me, and kind of take the whole thing that it's not about this." And then her makeup artist turned. She goes, "We should put a big red X on your lips." And I was like, "If you're up for it, let's do it."
It's great.
Yeah. And it's just listening. Sometimes just listening, realizing the people around you when you're taking a picture, that you're collaborating with them. Listening to everybody, because somebody might find something, probably like in the recording studio. It's like if you're the only voice when you're recording something, is it really going to be 100? Is it really going to be amazing? And if someone on the side says to you, "What about if we try this?" And if you don't allow yourself as a photographer to listen to, you don't have to take it in. Just listen. Listening to someone saying, "Did you look over here? There's a piece of the light," or "Did you?" My first knows me so well. Like he'll say to me, like, "You got to look at the corner." Like I'll be over here so focused on trying to get this picture, and I'll go, "You got to look at the corner over here for a second, because it's like there's a great piece of light." If you don't listen to that, you're not, you're an idiot. You really do have to do that. So you can go to the next one. So so I started drawing a bunch, because after they took my scissors away on airplanes making collages, I started drawing, and
they took mine away too.
I had the pilot walk out and look at me, because I had a pair of sewing shears that I would cut up Polaroids with, and I'm sitting there and I'm cutting them up, and the stewardess looked at me and she goes, "Did you bring those on?" She goes, "How did you get those in?" I go, "They're in my bag."
Yeah.
And she goes, and then she comes back out with the pilot, and he goes, "Show the pilot what you have in your bag." And he goes, He goes, "What do you?" I just cut up, and I showed him my journal. I said, he was like, "That's amazing. You got on with those."
Did he let you keep them?
Oh yeah, he didn't take them away. And then, a year later, everything went south, and I wasn't carrying any liquids, no glue, no nothing. So I just started drawing on things. I never had drawn in my life, and I was like, screw it, I'm just going to start making lines and seeing what happens. And it started happening. I mean, it came out of somewhere. I must have at some point decided I wanted to do that, but. So this is my,
who are you drawing
when I
on?
turned 57. So these are pictures of me, a silhouetted image of me, and then I basically drew like 57 faces of myself on my 57th birthday.
Oh.
So, yeah. You can go to the next one. So every year I would mark my birthday by a journal page of how I felt about myself. And then still the portraits went on. And I started distorting images, which was a thing I started with my wife. And then I did this whole series with David Bowie, where he actually asked me to take his face and completely... And we did the whole band that way with Gail. Gail was the bass player. Gail,
right?
Sorry.
She's cool.
Amazing woman,
Yeah.
And so he had me. He came over one time, and we were in the studio and at a Smashbox. No, it's not. It was called Industria in New York City, and we're surrounded by all these other studios. And you can hear what's going on through the wall. But David wanted to set the band up and play and have me photograph him while they were performing. So, and I looked at him, and they turned it up and started playing. And I just laughed and I said, the first knock on the door, you get to answer the door. So you imagine somebody coming over like, can you turn the music down? You're a little loud in there, But Gail was there, and it was an amazing day of just taking pictures.
With Reeves on guitar?
Reeves Gabrel. Yeah. And but it was for Earthling. These were all pictures done for Earthling. Like in the packaging, there's a great shot where David's screaming and Gail's like looking at the camera, and she has that Alexander McQueen mask
yeah, I know
on.
that photo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
his
was
mouth
in
was
that
open
session.
like wide, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was all distorted, and he wanted all these kind of totally screwed up image. And it was the same time we shot the cover, him with the Union Jack jacket on. And
I love that shot.
Yeah. So I was doing these kind of distorted nudes with my obsession with Francis Bacon. So I started distorting faces and bodies, and because I couldn't paint like Bacon, but I wanted to kind of find my own voice of how that would be. So I started doing these distorted nudes and finding different ways to kind of mess up pictures in camera, so they were kind of one of a kind. So
Who's the guy with his face?
that's me.
Ah,
They're all from different birthdays.
Okay.
So, yeah. You can go to the next. So this is the drummer from a band called Crash Test Dummies.
sure.
Yeah, and we were just doing a shoot, and I said, hey, would you, and I loved his face, and I was like, would you just for a second kind of let me kind of mess with your face? And so he sat there, and it was just, but once you're doing it, you can't, I couldn't recreate either one of these. Like that's it, and then you put everything down, and you pull the slide, and you go to the next one. And all this film that I shot this stuff with doesn't exist anymore, so you can't, I found other ways of doing it digitally, but I like the rawness because the Polaroids would fall apart, and like you'd shoot a Polaroid and it would maybe solarize because you pulled it too early, or it would only half of it would process. I loved all that stuff when that would happen.
Let me ask you this, because in the intro, Josh said you buy broken cameras, and as you said, you use a lot of different cameras.
Yeah.
And I don't know anything, but what you just said, are there kinds of film or cameras where they don't make the film for that anymore because no one has seen one of these since 1938?
Oh yeah, there's a ton.
And so, do you find like stashes of this film, and you and other people who collect those cameras land
you
on
can't.
it?
Well, a lot of it, like the Polaroid, they stopped making it, so it's all out of date. So you don't know what you're buying. A lot of people are always trying to give me Type 55 Polaroid, which was all those portraits are shot with. And the last time they made it was 2007. And I still have boxes at work.
Wow.
But if someone didn't store it right and they try to sell it to you, it's a mess. It doesn't really work. And now it's really expensive to buy that stuff. And I think there's a lot of that, but there's some cameras that you can't, like most Polaroid cameras you can't get the real old Polaroid for. They've been trying to remake stuff like that. Film-wise, they still make all the film, but it's all you have to get it processed to get it done right. To have someone have a printer. I still have a black and white printer who lives in New York, a guy named David Frawley, and he still prints for a lot of very big photographers, but the industry there's no patience anymore for that. I do a job and they want to walk. At the end of shooting a movie poster, they walk with the drive. Like literally everything.
Yeah.
I could shoot like 3,000 images, and at the end of the day, they'll say, okay, and the digital tech hands them a drive when they walk away.
Yeah, they're looking at an iPad in business class going back to their base.
Going back to the day, pulling their pics for the next morning, they have to have a meeting. I've even done shoots where, as I'm shooting, they're going up and they're being dropped into the studio so they can see every single picture I'm
No,
looking
I've been
at.
on a session like that where it was going to the top in real time.
Yeah, and you
we
suddenly
were
get this
getting
phone call.
instructions. We were getting the notes
In my ear.
like, you're done, next one, because it's going to the...
We were doing a shoot last week with a Zoom thing like that, and someone said, "Can you make him look more intense?" And I looked at the actor and I go, "They would like you to be more intense." And he goes, "You want to know what intense is? We're moving on to the next shot." And I said, "Got it." It's like we're moving on to the next shot. So, and I knew he was going to say no because it was just somebody having to say something. You know what I mean? While they're watching this.
Yeah.
So, and I got it. It's like, it's hard for a lot of people because it's just me on set nowadays looking at a Zoom and hearing them in my head while they tell me, like, can we do this? Can we turn left? Can we turn right? They're all the obvious things. But
I imagine you do so many sessions. Sometimes there's a lot of notes, people with their chin on your shoulder, and sometimes they go do your thing and send us the thing next week.
Right.
So I'm sure you run into, to this day, both, right?
Yeah. There's the illusion when you get to a certain part in the business that there's no one's gonna give you an opinion. And I have to say, I don't mind it because the commercial work is a collaboration. I have to appreciate that someone had to go out and get someone to create. These are the comps we want to shoot, right? And then they have to get them approved by somebody. And then they go and they hire the photographer. And then I come in and then they say, okay, this is what we need to shoot. And then it's my job to work with them to try to go beyond their expectations of what it is. And I like the collaboration aspect of that point because it's not this. I mean, I can take pictures at my house and do whatever. I can set up some goofy light and take pictures that has no purpose. I just want to make a weird kind of portrait of something, right? That's a different world. Yeah. But when I'm working commercially, you have to still appreciate that the people who are hiring you have gone through a lot to get you get you as the photographer to stand in the room.
And they have options.
Yeah. Oh, they have lots of options. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sure there's a few dollars that you might receive getting the job.
And there's also the point of not just doing exactly what's being said. You go beyond that. Go beyond what the expectations of people are.
Right.
So.
Do you ever, with your commercial shoots, do you ever repeat customers? Like, do you ever had like accounts that keep coming back, or is it like one and done?
No, there was a couple years that, like when I was doing Mad Men, I was also doing Breaking Bad, and I was doing Walking Dead, and I was doing, there was a Western, which my mind just went blank, up in Calgary. I was shooting for them. I did quite a few shows for them. And then there was a couple years when I worked for FX, and I was doing, American Horror Story and Wilford and
are you living on location, like days at a time?
Oh no.
So
Every moment I'm sitting on the ground, they got to pay me.
Actors
if I show up, it's like you come in, you pre-light, you shoot, you leave. So, and this can be any place in the world. Like I've seen more parts of the world in 2 days, like where the plane flight took longer.
Yeah.
Which you've experienced that with. Being a musician is kind of the same thing. So you go in, you do the concert, and you get on the bus and you go to the next place.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Yeah, they go, so what's Warsaw like? Well, the back of the venue had a service door.
Yeah.
And the hotel,
yeah.
I don't remember it because I didn't sleep much. And then there's the airport.
Yeah.
That's what was the food like? At the airport, I didn't see any of it.
The craft service at the concert, at the venue was amazing.
Like that. And I'm sure you've had a ton of crazy flights like that. It's like 7 big hours and then back to the airport.
Right back, yeah. And it is. It's but at the same point, it's, there's worse things in life.
No.
I smile about it all the time. I go,
way worse.
I really miss the traveling that I used to do. I mean, I haven't traveled much in the last year.
I haven't been on a plane since February of last year.
Oh my gosh.
And it's really weird.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm usually growing wings. I fly so much.
Yeah.
I just pick parts of the world, and either I'm working or I'm editing a book or something, and I'll go edit in the Peruvian Andes, or I'll go edit this book in, and I still do the work.
Right.
But by day I'll get some shots. By night I'll work.
Yeah.
Everything gets done.
Why not? If you can do it that way, that's the beauty of being in the arts, is that if you can basically just, if you make your own world and you don't expect to make $1 million, that's the problem with most people who basically get into the arts. They're looking for this cash thing. It doesn't exist. You know what it does? It allows you to basically do things like this, that I can go off and take pictures when do pictures I want to do, and then I still get to pay the bills. I can put my sons in college. I can just go like this. But my life and everything around me, and I married a wonderful woman who doesn't need to be shopping at wearing expensive clothes or being doing a certain thing. She's a painter, and we have the same life, and we enjoy the simple things of just basically creating together.
And you realize each one needs time just to
oh my gosh, yeah.
be quiet and paint or photograph or go on location. And
5 months into this, when we were doing the whole quarantine thing, she looked at me and she goes, "This is the longest you and I have ever been around each other." And I looked and I kind of smiled and I said, "Too much?" So, and luckily we have enough places to go, but both sons home, and, as she calls all the penis people, there were too many penis people at home. Can you all just leave,
That would send me to the garage probably.
Yeah, that's where my office is, above the garage, so I'm okay.
Yeah, punk rock was so great because there's no money in it. No matter how hard you play, you get the show.
Yep.
You get the approval of all 35 people who showed up to throw chairs at your head.
Yeah.
And you get the van that smells like the other guy.
Right.
And a long drive to St. Louis.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And it for a decade, that never changed.
Yeah.
There was no proof that I was ever going to be able to pay my rent. The indie band store is the 30th of every month. Everyone's on the phone. You got to spot me. I swear. Germany will be good to us.
Yeah.
And when you realize it's not about the money, it's so liberating. All there is I got this music, I got my guts, and I'm gonna go for it with fearing what?
Right.
Failure?
Yeah.
We're out here playing for Waffle House money.
Right.
This is it.
Yeah.
We've summited, so you better enjoy it, because there's no 4-star coming.
Right.
And that was good for me. Because it just made me
humbling.
either this is, you love this, or get out.
But the purest point of it too is if you're on stage and you have a great performance, that performance is everything. And you know how many people have that moment? Not many.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
It
mean,
hurts.
and that to me is I was at Woodstock when you basically went out and opened up the skies of rain, as I called it. That you went out on stage and you were in your shorts and you went like this, and it was like Henry Rollins, and you went out and you went, boom, and the skies just went and I remember laughing my ass off, going only Henry could be the one standing out there and calling the rain at this point. So, but it was amazing. Yeah. So I'm sorry. Go next one. So I started painting and drawing and putting ink on photographs, and the journals were always the conversation. So in the book, it's this kind of collaboration of it. You can keep going. Next one. So this is a page in the book. So I started kind of seeing there was this kind of great thread, as you were talking about a common thread. I started seeing these threads, how certain pages and certain journals went with certain imagery. And I tried to keep this kind of conversation going in the book that was that these three things somehow came together, at different points in my life, but they all kind of told the same kind of conversation, or there was a line that kind of went through them, or a graphic that went through them, and it kind of brought them all back together to make a double page in the book. So
was that from a commercial shoot?
No, that was interesting. So I get obsessed by anything I can do in the camera that I can distort an image. So I was on a shoot and I found these. Someone had a chandelier an old chandelier, and I was screwing around with the set designer had them, and they had a box and to put them up there. And I started picking them up and putting them in front of my iPhone. And I was playing with them.
The glass,
and messing around with them.
And that's that?
Yeah, that's what that is. So then I basically went home, and then I found the lens, which was a $30 crap lens that I bought online. That was this little tiny surveillance camera lens that would actually find the center of a larger crystal. So it's all this kind of what if I try this? What if I try this? What if I do this? And I do this at my house. I have a little tiny studio at the house of natural light, and I can do things where I can put a light up.
It's a laboratory.
And yeah, it is. It's totally what it is. And I had this girl come over that was interested in being photographed, and I just shot all these pictures of her. Cut to, they were doing the movie Split with James McAvoy, the M Night movie, about having multiple personalities. And they came to me and they said, do you have anything that will basically create in an in-camera image multiple personalities? And I came up with, and I went back to my little laboratory, and I came up with quite a few of these things. So I have these, and there'll be as a picture of that I used later on of James McAvoy that I shot for that project. So you can go to the next one. So these are kind of like, this is kind of like my Edward Weston Pepper meets my Francis Bacon kind of distortion
Bacon.
nude. And then that's Bacon. Yeah, that was totally when I was shooting her and she was in this main space. All I could think of was like how Bacon would draw these lines around things or bring lines in. I did this with Bowie one time where I had him sitting on the floor and I drew lines around him. And I had him just sitting on the floor like looking at me, and I would take lines and I would kind of create, because he wanted to do a whole series of these pictures. We remade the picture of the pictures of the Red Corner were from that series of pictures of kind of Bacon-esque imagery. We redid the Pope. Was it the Pope with the screaming cardinal where he's like,
yeah.
I redid that with David where he's screaming and he's all blurred, but I put scaffolding around him instead of having everything else, and he's in this big throne and he's screaming, So I would have fun, but I was always obsessed by Bacon. So, every once in a while, it kind of, the idea of this graphics of the lines come into thing, and it kind of made sense for that. And I loved the two of them, obviously the same girl, but, the kind of the pull to two of them. So.
Yeah, Bacon's my favorite.
I love Bacon. Yeah.
I have that book of his different studios, like the Hurricane.
Have you been to the studio?
No.
I know, because they moved it to Ireland.
Oh.
It's in it. And so a friend of mine, a photographer I know, basically was hired to go to the studio, photograph it as an archival thing, and then they took it apart and they moved it to a museum in Ireland. And you can go there, and it's recreated exactly how his studio was.
Chaos.
And then you can look in, and it is. It's totally like all the buckets of paint and the goo in the floor, and there's all these windows you can kind of look in like you were in his studio.
Oh,
so
wow.
Yeah, so.
I'll have to find
But
that.
yeah, you should go if you ever get there. It's in this weird museum in London. I can't think of it, but it's not where you think it would be. So,
all right.
Yeah. Go to the next one. So this is the image I'd done for Split. And then I decided it needed to even be more, so I kept on multiplying the image. But that's James McAvoy. And then I made it, and I started drawing back into it, and kind of, I presented these ideas to them. Of course, they were way too far for them to ever want to use in the poster. But sometimes I just kind of will send ideas over and say, this could be really cool if you want to do this with it. So.
And I'm not trying to insult if you don't like the guy, but your writing, it reminds me of R. Stedman.
Exactly. It should be, yeah. Because
Okay.
Stedman's is a huge influence in the sense of, I knew he was like my spirit guide when I saw the documentary he did with Johnny Depp. And his opening thing is when he goes, I don't know what I'm gonna do today. I'm just gonna go, and he throws a piece of ink on the ground and onto the paper, and he goes like, and he sees something as it moves. And that kind of irreverence to that you have to be structured, or this is what it's going to have to be. It's just the idea of doing. You know what I mean? And his work is just so inspiring to me. There's it's him and Ansel Kiefer and Sigmar Polk, and they're all people who basically go beyond the point of, more artists than photographers. Like walking through a Richard Serra sculpture to me is mind-blowing. Like I have to walk through them several times because the journeys that you have and the things you see as you walk through are so much, you can't describe to people and you don't want to, but you need to experience to be able to see, you know what I mean? And understand space and what space and light and shape does. He is the master of that, and especially living in that stuff, so. Excellent. So these are just more layouts from the book, how things I felt like went together. Even like this is a picture of my son, my youngest Cooper, and seeing like how and it was funny because doing this book also with David Fahey and Nicholas Fahey, when they were laying things out, they saw it. They saw it quicker than I saw it. Where I was. If it's kind of like you write a song and then you record it, you go, this is how I want to be, and then someone says, yeah, but what if you put this, and this into it? Or what if you pulled from this and this? And I wasn't really thinking, because when I saw my journals, I saw them as being precious. Like, this is my journal. If you want to look at my journal, this is what it is. I couldn't see putting it with other things.
Right.
And then when they did it, it completely blew my mind and go, like, exactly. And then I saw that everyone always asks, like, the thread in my work. You asked me that. But this is the bigger question of is how does it all go together? Like where's the beginning, where's the middle, and where's the end? Well, the beginning was this, the middle is this, there is no end yet. I mean, I'm still learning every day. I'm still experiencing new things. I'm still teaching myself new things. I'm still failing as much as I possibly can because, failure is the most amazing teacher in life, So I love when you put something on and it goes wrong. You know what I mean? And then you go like, okay, so was that supposed to be that, or am I supposed to go beyond? And then you just keep going with it. Or you put it aside for a second, you come back, and then suddenly it tells you who it's supposed to be. And that's what's great about journals, keeping journals. So you can go to the next. So I keep trying things. This is like light painting with Christmas tree lights that I found that I could kind of paint with, and then just kind of incorporating them into journals, and then so what's next? So you have this beautiful portrait of this woman. So what else can I do with it? So you print on a couple different papers, and you start looking at textures, and you look at line, and you look at like words that might go with it, or something else that might be seen.
The one on the top right, it's disturbing. It looks like a crime scene photo or an autopsy shot with the non-fixed eyes and the mouth kind of gaping open.
Yeah. It's funny how portraiture is when you look at portraiture, I like when things aren't right in portraits, which is so hard to be able to show people because they want to see someone looking back at you, or there's a smile or something. I like ones that kind of make you think a bit, like where they're kind of a little bit off. So, yeah.
And in there, her left eye on the facing page there, there's like some criminal intent.
Yeah, and then accented by the other layer of that paper going through, which kind of brings you to it even more so.
Yes.
So you can go to the next. And this is just one. I mean, I've been obsessed by movement lately and blur, and I think it's because it's finding. I mean, where I can look at a model and say, move around, and I jump around, and I can say, well, then jump this way. Now spin your head back this way. There are these moments that are captured if you can't plan anything about it. You just have to allow it. And then these little wonderful gifts come out of all this motion and the energy of the person that's putting it out. Like you'll see things happen that you didn't ask to have happen.
Right.
But they just happen, and you have to be open to allow it and not try to control it.
You couldn't have predicted this.
I couldn't. No.
Right.
No. I could say spin your head back and forth, but to get that perfect moment of it, you have to allow that it could be completely a failure, but you could also allow yourself that to be open to that it could be something that it's never going to happen again.
Well, no, I was about to say, you'll never get that again.
Oh, no.
You could have the same person, the same everything.
Yeah.
And you won't even get close.
Well, and with digital now, you can look at 7 frames before and 7 frames after. The 7 before and 7 after are nothing like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's that beautiful moment that seems to happen.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's it on mine.
You guys ready for some questions?
Sure.
Yeah, so shall I tell them what's going to happen? Okay. We have hit our 90-minute mark almost perfectly. And seeing all of our photos, we're going to transition now and do some Q&A that you are sending to us, and we will answer them as best as we can.
The first question is for Henry. What are some similarities and differences in your creative process when making art in your different mediums? Do you find inspiration for writing music in the same way you do for photography, writing, etc.?
Thank you for the question. I've never had an artistic day in my life. I have no artistic bones in my body. I'm a crass opportunist and a jackass of all tirades. I'm insatiably curious and pretty mad. And so everything I've done, I read some Henry Miller books many years ago, and I said, writing's easy. He just writes about getting drunk and running around Paris. And then I tried to write and went, oh, this is really hard. And I tried to do music. I went, this is really hard. And I learned to apply myself. So all I have is interest to do. Nothing I've ever done besides being on stage alone talking to an audience has ever come naturally to me. So the creative process for me is whatever comes into my mind, to have the guts to follow it. And as we were talking about during our discussion, sometimes it takes 3 months to find out this idea wasn't any good, and you're never getting the 3 months back, and the 23,000 words are fairly useless. And you'll never do that again, but it took 90 days to find that out. So my creative process is, I get agitated by things, and I want to know. And my mind is naturally distorted, and so it'll never be straight when it's coming from me. It'll always be prismatic and coming through everything in my life. And so I've learned through repetition, discipline, and just sitting for hours applying myself how to put the words in front of each other to make them do what I want. It took me, I don't know how many thousand photographs to finally be able to put emotion, to get the emotion to come through the lens like I can do with a pen, that I had to learn. So this was learning. None of it ever comes naturally to me, except to tell stories. I'm pretty much born to do that. And so it's, I tell people it's cold buckets of water in the face and clap push-ups and getting up at 04:30 and applying myself. And so the through line is, I really want to do this. I really want you to like it. Not where I'm going to cater the work to your likes. I really want you to dig what I'm doing. I want to impact you. I want to knock you out. And I want to compel you by compelling myself. And hopefully we both land on the same page. And if we don't, we tried, or I tried. And that's my whole, it's never changed. I've been doing creative things for 40 years. And it becomes more refined the older I get. But when I was young, I just kind of threw everything at the wall and made a mess of it and started learning to sharpen it a little, not that much. So I don't know if I'm creative, but I always got something going on, that's for sure. And I don't know if it's creativity or anger or agitation. I respect creative people. I don't know if I'm that, but I do get a lot done. Because as I tell people, I don't have a whole lot else going on. So.
Great, thank you. And for Frank, if you could turn back time and change one thing about your career, what would it be?
Nothing. I think everything has happened for a reason. I've been, I have fallen into more things and not, like when MTV started out and they didn't have direct enough videos for the content, they went to music photographers and said, hey, do you want to be a music video director? And a bunch of people went out and decided to do it, and I kept them saying, I have no interest in doing that. And I finally met a guy, and he said, he let me do it the way I thought would be interesting, and I did that. But it wasn't, everyone else was starving to do it, and it's like a lot of things. I think things come to you when they're supposed to, as long as if you're open to basically allowing them to come to you and then taking the opportunity. And not making it about money. Money has always been, anytime anyone's ever paid me something like large sums of money to do something or said, this is going to really be good for your career, is always disastrous. It's like, or it's not. You do things for the reason that you want to be creative and show somebody something that maybe they haven't seen or what you see and how you feel. So, yeah, but so I wouldn't change anything. I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be at this point in my life.
Excellent, thank you. This one comes from Ariel Payne for Henry. Were there any specific cultures that you encountered that changed how you live your everyday life?
I was born and raised in 1961 in Washington, D.C., where the racial tension was such you could barely cut through it. And to the left of my mother is Joan Baez in a wall. To the right of my father is Fox News and whatever else. And so I was kind of pulled in two directions, one the racist, the other one the hard-working government liberal who loved Joan Baez and Dylan, etc. Divorced, of course, and so I would ping-pong back and forth. I landed on my mother's side of all of that. But the Washington, D.C. area and racism was perhaps one of the most influential determinant factors of my young life. It politicized me. It's why I vote the way I do. I'm concerned with the things I'm concerned about because I saw how awful racism was. Kids would chase after me, white boy or whatever. It's terrifying, and I'm not a tough guy, so it was easy to get me to lose control of my bladder, which they thought was really funny, and you really can't control this no matter how much you try. And so I said, well, I want to be an enemy of that, because that's no good. And that really, when I got into punk rock, I took that into it. And then the other big determinant thing in my life was I came out to Los Angeles in the summer of 1981 and joined a band called Black Flag. And in those days, I was a veteran of the minimum wage working world, 60 hours a week, key of the store on my keychain. I knew about hard work until I joined Black Flag, where you're doing, how many hours are we practicing today? 7. For how long? The next 6 weeks before your first show. But I'm ready. You'll know when you're ready. And I never understood work until I joined Black Flag. And the members of Black Flag were a little older than me. And it was boot camp. I mean, I've never seen people who could work like that. Like, don't sleep, just work. There's coffee, get it done. I got a lot of that rubbed off on me. It informs the companies I have, how I tour, how I work, my release rate, my being prolific. I learned it from them. And I was a very crazy, hyperactive guy, and they gave me some real discipline and some like, sit down, shut up, get it done. I learned quite a bit from them. But those two things, DC and Black Flag, were insanely formative. Other things influenced me to lesser degrees. Success was probably the biggest test of my life, dealing with success. Like, finally, was never a goal, but now they like you and they pay you. Oh no, what do you do with all of that? And not have it ruin you, as you said, when they offer you the money. You're like, oh, can we not talk about that?
Yeah.
Talk to that person about
Yeah.
it. I just want to do the thing.
Yeah.
So success has been a challenge. I wouldn't say may it never happen to you, but when it comes your way, it's a very unwieldy bit of gear.
Be careful what you wish for. That's
Yes.
always the conversation.
And if you ever wish for success, wish for good work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. Frank, this one's from Lori Ivis. Any art directors that you admire or love to work with? Any ones from the past? And she dropped Alexei Brodovich.
Yeah. Well, I would have loved to work with him, but I'm a little too young for that one. But I have because of my work, I think the art directors who hire me are usually very open-minded and want to push the boundaries as far as they can go most time. I mean, I've had an amazing relationship with Todd Hewins and Stephanie Gibbons at FX for the last, I don't know, 8-9 years, which is the most extreme possible photo shoot you can ever be in your life. And like, you'll shoot something normally and you'll say like, you have to say to somebody if you're shooting a job, well, do you want to be able to cut this out, or is the black too black? And they'll say to you, you make sure I can still basically print this another way. With them, it's kind of like, no, it needs to be black. It's like, I don't need to ever go back. This is the picture. We're doing it right now. This is it. And that kind of art director who allows you to be that, in my time frame now, is the person you really want to work with a lot of times, because they don't need to answer anybody else. But that's a rarity in the industry, because people always have somebody at the top of the game who's going to say to you, But when I was younger, I got lucky in magazines. Fred Woodward at Rolling Stone, he's the guy and Laurie Ockenfels and Jody Peckman. They were photo editors, but Fred was at the magazine, and I could actually walk in with one picture and say, here it is. And he would run it. I did that with Public Enemy, where they showed up at different times and made my first collage. And I said, they didn't come all at the same time, because it was like a 3-day shoot waiting for people to show up. And so I shot them all separate and made a 3-headed beast. Out of the 3 of them, put, Flava Flav in the center, and I cut it up and I walked in and handed it to him, and he goes, great. Didn't ask to see what else you got, anything else. And over the years, he let me get away with that quite a few times, and Laurie and Jody. So I got lucky that way. Photo editors I dealt with more than art directors when I was younger, because they were the ones hiring you. And the ones that would send you on things that you were like, why are you sending me to go photograph on a destroyer out of San Diego? to photograph the crew and the captains, and and I'm like, what am I doing here? This is not my thing. And they're like, oh, I just want to see how you see it, which I thought was kind of, when those challenges came in, those were terrifying to me, was to have someone say to you, like, maybe this isn't what you normally do, but we want you to go do it, and we want to see. And that's how I started. That's how I went to Africa, like, where Travel Magazine was like, we've seen a million pictures of, with guys with long lenses and doing beautiful sunsets. You go take pictures, So I ended up in Kenya and shooting, like, a ton of stuff there, and and going to Haiti and going to Peru, and shooting at Machu Picchu, and they just wanted to see something different. So and over the years, since I was constantly doing things in a different way, it suddenly started to pay off in my late 40s, and that was a perfect time to have it happen, because I had all these little things in my head. I was able to do a million different, if this is the problem, I can answer it with this thing. I can do this, I can do this. Same thing with, you've done it where music, and even with writing, anything that you do, you can pull from the past forward to basically answer the question of the moment.
Yeah.
And that's like,
I count on it.
yeah, you have to. And the only way you get there is by failing at things and experiences and allowing yourself to be open to watch things happen. So
Yeah, I've learned more from my screw-ups than my successes.
Yep. Yeah.
Successes, that's how you get hit by something, because you're not looking in the right direction. Failure is a great teacher.
Yeah. It is. So, yeah.
Excellent. This one comes from Jeff O'Brien, and it's for both you guys. Have you ever had to face creative burnout or any kind of creative block? How did you get out of it?
I'll go. Every once in a while, someone who should be writing to a real writer, dear Henry, I have writer's block. How do I get through it? I go, I'm not a writer, man. Just pretend. Just like, don't think you're a writer, so there will be no block. I learned from Henry Miller, who said in one of his passages, never go to the bottom of the well. Leave something at the bottom. If you go and there's nothing left, you'll have the days following, you'll really have difficulty. So leave something there, and don't worry about it. The horse will still be there. You can get on it tomorrow. So I never worry about it, because I'm not. When people ask me, what do you do for a living? I'm like, oh no. I just go, radio show? Because that's real. But like, you take photographs? Yeah, you're a photographer. Oh, no. That's a photographer. And so I've never copped at really having a job. I'm just kind of wandering around until I finally grow up. And so the writer's block, that's someone else's idea. Burnout is just bad human management. You have to give yourself ways to not burn out. Nutrition, restorative sleep, incentives. Like Saturday, we're going to go to the park or whatever it is. It's okay to have a goodie at the end of the trail to, like, yay, I get the pizza night or whatever. Because you want to be always moving, always creating without hitting it so hard you have this burnout time, because that can lead to not being able to come back and really hit it. So work joyfully with a vengeance and never floor it, because it's a marathon, and burnout is an end. And often burnout just comes from ego. I'll do all-nighter. Your brain's going to work better with some sleep. Michael Stipe used to tell me, I really get creative on sleep deprivation. I'm like, not like 3 or 4 nights. He's like, no. But like one night, and I started doing it. He's right. You're Rimbaud for a minute there. But then you need to sleep.
Yeah.
Because you look back at your writing, it's garbage.
I think a lot of times when we get to burnout, you're too concerned about others and what they're thinking about your work, or you're trying to satisfy too many other people. And I think that's the biggest part of burnout, that instead of going to take the picture or write the phrase, you're writing it for somebody else, or to satisfy somebody else. And I find that to be the biggest problem in photography, is that to find your voice, there's a lot of soul searching to figure out what that is as an artist, because you don't want to be the next so-and-so. You want to be the person. They don't want you to, and so you need to always kind of be doing that. And burnout happens usually, I know when I'm not saying I'm perfect. I've had moments where I've been like, but I kind of usually fall back to saying, I'll just go upstairs and I'll pick up something and I'll start screwing around with something I found, or I'll pick up a new camera. Pick up a camera I've never touched. You know what I mean? And I'll say, what does this do? And that will trigger something You know, I also found teaching is good. Every year when I teach once a year, it reminds me of so much that I've forgotten about myself. Because people ask you questions about like, well, what do you do when you do this and that? And I'll start talking about it, and I'll be like, oh, that's right. You know, I was that person at one point. I did.
Maybe
do that.
it reminds you why you do it.
Yeah, yeah. Because you talk about your passion when you teach. You don't talk about. At least I do. I mean, I'm like an open vein when I start teaching. I teach every single hour we're together. I get into people. I try to find what they really are trying to figure out where to go to, and I'm exhausted by the end. My wife always makes fun of me. I come home and I'm like burnt. I need like a week off after that. But I'm also energized.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah.
For Frank, how has drawing on your work added to the storytelling aspects?
I guess it's just creating the faces I couldn't capture in the camera, maybe. You know what I mean? Like and that's also, it started out by basically making fun of myself. At my 50th, I started making the 50-year-old fat guy, and it was like there was all this plywood sitting in my house. There was all this, we had construction. There was all this extra plywood, and I started cutting it up, and I started putting white paint, and I just started drawing this fat guy sitting on all these. And then it went to cardboard. And then all of a sudden I realized I wanted to, okay, well, maybe I can make a face. Maybe I could do this. Maybe I could do that. And it just started kind of, they're all cartoony. There's never a reality to most of them, you know, and they're mostly sad middle men with penises, you know what I mean, who basically are just like looking at the world and angry and yelling at things, but they have nothing to be angry about because they're fine, you know. But, you know, they look at a beautiful woman, they're like, no. It's like, you know, it's like all that kind of shit, you know. And it's like, and it's supposed to be tongue in cheek. It's supposed to be funny, you know. And it's a lot of I mean, like, you know, I just think it's kind of funny that, you know, people look at it sometimes. My wife was worried my book came out. She was like, how are you going to deal with the whole Me Too thing? And I was like, what are you talking about? She goes, someone's going to ask you. She goes, there's nude women in there, and there's sexual content. And I said, if you don't like it, don't buy it. That's all I can say. I mean, there's nothing cruel or mean to anybody. And if anything, it's making fun of myself. You know what I mean? Which if you can't make fun of yourself, you know, why live? It's kind of fun.
It's one of my favorite occupations.
Oh, it's so good, isn't it? Yeah. If you can take the piss out of yourself before someone else does it, they have no idea. It takes all the shit out of them, and then you meet the people you do want to meet because they're into that. And then they're probably the same kind of person who wants to make fun of themselves.
I'm such a target-rich environment. Oh my God, there's so many ways to go. I'm so spoiled for choice.
This one's from Goja, and it's for Henry. How do you get over the feeling that you're intruding on someone's private moment and just take the pictures anyway?
I establish a conversation. I don't want to be sneaky guy with the camera. That's why I don't use a long lens. I learned that from a German journalist I encountered in Africa many years ago. Someone near her was using that big Canon tan, get the football shot from a mile away. And she said, you have one of those? I go, I have one. I've never used it. I just bought it. And she said, don't, get in there.
Yeah.
Like, go meet them. Yeah. Like, get right up close. And it's one of the reasons I use a wide lens. You want to get someone's face with a wide lens, you're like, hi, this might touch your nose.
Yeah.
And you got to go, hi, can I take your photo? And sometimes it's yes, and sometimes it's no. And sometimes there's some real intensity with the no. But that establishes a conversation. You can go for humor, but like, you're a movie star. Look, come on, the jawline. Come on. What's one quick one? Okay, no means no with you. I got it.
Yeah.
And so it forces me to get into populations. And I'm walking through villages, souks, bazaars, next to rivers, down railroad tracks, wherever. And that lens forces me to go up and say hi. And that's what I try and do. It forces me out of myself, which is not easy all the time. And you have to get ready for all the kids to come up and grab your arm and look at your tattoos, laugh, hilarious. They just think it's the funniest thing they've ever seen. And they forget your arm is attached to you. They want to show their friends. You have to kind of go with them and like, go ahead, here's another, and have a moment and go, okay, now can we do some photos? And they're like, well, okay. So it becomes playful. And just say, yeah, you're amazing. I just, please may I? And that's what I do. And asking politely and working quietly has worked for me, where I'm alone with an expensive camera in a pretty tough neighborhood in Nairobi or Dakar or wherever, and sometimes you have to defend your camera and smile your way out of the village because someone sees you as an opportunity. It's not always fun. And so being polite and realizing, how would you feel if someone just walked up and took a shot of you and walked away? It happens to me a lot, but I'm used to it. But if you're just a real person, you might be really offended. You might be really offended if someone came from another country to kind of groove with you for a minute, get a photo, and go back into business class and go home. Mm-hmm. Tread very carefully with people's dignity and respect is all you need to really remember. Then everything will come to you naturally. And put your curiosity up front.
Your lens choice is perfect for you, and I'm wondering if you really realize that,
The
because
what?
your lens choice, the wide lens.
That's my guy right there.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, it's not just here. You got to look at the outside of it. It's the woman's hands. It's the band down below. You look at Henry's pictures, and it's a circle. He's given you so much, whether you're paying attention or not, which probably you're not, but that's the beauty of it, because you see the moment. But the girl laughing on the side, there's all those there. You go out of the center on Henry's pictures, and there's another story going on the sides. On almost all the images that I looked at in that book, when you see groups of people or things going on, it's amazing. I mean, and it's the perfect point of being a photographer. And that lens is what you're supposed to have, because they say, any war photographer will tell you, if you're sitting there shooting a war with a long lens, you don't feel what you're in the middle of.
Right.
You need to be feeling what you're doing.
There'll be no humanity
those
if you're
pictures
safe.
do it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not into going on some daredevil pursuit. That's a whole other thing I don't like. But you're not going to get the human story unless you're smelling it, and
Right. Yeah.
that's blood.
You're standing in the garbage pile. You're and with that little girl, and you're seeing, you could send her that picture and send it out, and no one would know, because it's such a beautiful shot. The light, everything about it, what she's wearing, stunning. And then all of a sudden you go like, okay, here's the wider view.
Yep.
And your brain would explode.
And there's always more to tell. That's why I like that lens, because it lets you tell a lot.
Perfect.
I'm kind of greedy for experience. Like, I want the whole thing in here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, it's good. No, it's a good choice for you.
You guys good for 2 more questions?
Yeah, we got 6.5 minutes. We're okay. Cool. I'll give you the wave.
The methods that photographers and musicians utilized for earning a living 10 to 20 years ago has changed dramatically in recent years. In your opinion, what does the future hold for artists hoping to make a living in their chosen medium?
You go.
Is that the room? I don't know what it's for.
I know what your answer is going to be,
both.
I think, and I think it's going to be really good.
I think that people think too much about, like, oh, we're not shooting film anymore. Now we're shooting digital. So I think that the tools are the tools. You have to leave it at that point. So that's the technical aspect of it, is don't get wrapped up in that all of a sudden everything is digital, or all we have to this way. The biggest problem is, it's kind of funny, is that and it's how much you want to basically dive down the well of money again, right? Is that when I used to take pictures and I'd shoot for a magazine, I'd shoot Henry for a magazine, the pictures would go back, they'd go back to my resale agent, and then they would sell them to magazines, and I'd make a little cash on the side, from that. Nowadays, there's no more magazines. So the pictures now are basically, like, there could be 5 Instagram accounts on Henry Rollins, and they have collected pictures from all photographers and put them on there, and there's no money being transferred. And they have this site that they basically focus on one person, okay? So the business aspect of it, of starting out as a photographer, is very difficult, because there are no more small venues to basically hand out your image, like magazines to get started at. Do a quarter-page picture here, a quarter-page. It's all internet, so either you can do it or you don't do it, and you have to find somebody who's going to look at you and give you a chance to do it. It's a lot harder to start out as a photographer now. But there's a million ways of doing it. You need to get Joe Pugliese to come in and talk to your students about his view of editorial photography. It is fascinating, and his take on it, okay? And he does a much better job than I would ever get into it. But overall, I just think it's like, it's no different. It's just the time. It's the Woody Allen, Midnight in Paris conversation. It's like every era is a different time, and I think that if you keep looking back to say, well, it's not that anymore, you're not basically being present in the moment. And you need to be present in the moment and just accept what it is and figure out what the direction and what the journey is going to be. So I don't know if that was the answer what you were thinking, but
that's exactly what I thought Frank would say. Basically, mediums change, methods change, but you're there. You're the through line. Yeah. No matter film, digital, talking about photography, it's you're holding the camera. You're manipulating the image. You're not shooting that, you're shooting that. You're still making the choices. Mm-hmm. So even though the methods might change, it's still your analog, it's your life that you're there with, and you're trying to get other lives to come through. Mm-hmm. So digital, analog, there's differences absolutely, but it's your heartbeat. Yeah. And it's never been easy to break into a creative way of making the rent. It's always been tough because there's a lot of very talented people out there. Like in Los Angeles, are you kidding? There's a lot of good people, no matter what they do, they're really good at it. And you're one of many. And so without the magazines, yeah, that quarter-page photo, I'm sure that kept you going for quite a while.
Yeah.
But you're still doing great photos.
Yeah.
And there's still going to be a need for that, even though it's like someone on a cell phone, Instagram, a platform. Yeah. And this is kind of over my pay scale. So I don't fear that. Like, you don't do it with a pen anymore. You're doing it with this. Mm-hmm. It's still me. It's just the thing is the method has changed. It's still the blues to me. Mm-hmm. And as long as I keep showing up, it's going to be that thing. Like Motorhead. Lemmy shows up, trust me, it's Motorhead. Doesn't matter what year it is. Yeah. And if you can have the guts to keep bringing yourself to it, you might be okay. Mm-hmm. And it's always tough.
Yeah.
All right, time for one more, I think. How do you make meaningful photographs and not just pretty pictures? This is for both of you guys.
Start.
Yeah. It goes back, it's funny, there's a great line by Richard Serra, art is purposely useless, which I've always loved that line. And I think it's true, is that if you're taking pictures for yourself just to answer a question in your mind or something you need to answer, that's the purest form. If you're taking the picture for somebody else, then it gets into, like, if you photograph somebody, everyone always wants a pretty picture. You commented on the lazy eye or anything like that, where someone looks like something's not right about the face. That to me is more an interesting portrait than someone being tremendously beautiful staring back at you. The distortion of beauty has always been my favorite thing. Taking it apart and kind of seeing what actually is, and it's still beautiful. I mean, still in the end of the day, there's a beauty to it. So, I don't know if did that answer the question?
For me, it's just the great affection I have for, my primary interest with the camera is taking photos of people in interesting parts of the world. To cop from Bruce Lee and Enter the Dragon, why don't you take landscape shots? Landscapes don't hit back. He said boards don't hit back. People, you got to, talk to them. You have to deal. I love our species. We're flawed. But, then there's John Coltrane. That's a good example. And so it's my love affair with humanity and just the human body and jaw lines and skin texture. And meaningful, if I feel something when I take that photo, if I forget to breathe, I also, I haven't breathed for 40 seconds, that's when I know I'm in that moment with that person. Oh, yeah. And it's forgetting to breathe. It's quite a thing. And bringing yourself to the thing. So we are armed with about 10 seconds left.
It's all you, man.
And so that's Frank. I'm Henry. Thank you so much for letting us talk with you. Thanks for the questions, Josh, and all of you who sent them in. And until next time, we'll see you down the way. Keep in shape because of you. He goes, what do you mean? I go, man, I've got to stay in shape because when you're